First of all, could I have you say and spell your name for me, please?
Matthew Crowder, Mattthew Crowder.
Tell me a little bit about what happened last night or early this morning, I guess.
So, I mean, it was just one of those nights I couldn't really sleep, and we were open for today, or supposedly going to be open today. So I figured I'd go in pretty early, and it's not uncommon that the owner himself shows up about 4:30-ish. So I figured I'd meet him out there, and we would just kind of talk and game plan for the day. And I had completely just disregarded and didn't really think about the fact that the creek might be flooded. And so I had pulled up with that not even on my mind. And when I saw it, I figured I'd wait there for him to show up, and then we would talk about it. And then obviously say we're not working today and go home and enjoy the rest of the day. And I waited for a little bit, and he just never came around. And then at around 4:30-ish, is when the water started getting pretty close to where my car was parked. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to go home for the day, and he'll figure it out. And I leave pretty much where that neighborhood was to get back onto the main road. And I just, something was telling me I should probably just go double check. So I left my car up there because I was concerned about if it were to go wrong, then my car would just be down there and I'd have to get it out. And so I kind of jogged back down there. And by the time I got back down there, it was considerably more flooded and the water was coming up at a pretty quick rate. And so I had stuck around and just kind of took videos of it and everything. And then all of a sudden, just within 30 seconds, the people's front yard was starting to take on water pretty bad. And I kind of sat there and kind of judged whether or not I should, say something if it'll be okay or not. And then just, yeah, in the moment I said, yeah, I'm gonna start hollering out. And so I wasn't able to knock on their door or window just because of how much water was coming in. And the last thing I wanted was something to happen to me and they never get the word. So I got as close as I could and started yelling. And then the first thing I had seen was just a kid come out, a younger kid holding the dog. And I'm like, okay, we get someone's attention. And, the first thing he sees when he wakes up at 4 in the morning is his front yard flooded. So he's in shock and he's not saying anything back. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe he doesn't speak English, but he gets the picture. And then he just darts back in the house. And I wait there for a second. And then mom comes out and she is also in the same state of just shocked and doesn't really know what to do. So I start kind of communicating to them of, make sure everyone's awake, get your head count, and let's make a plan. Go look at the backyard. Where would you think the best place to go is? And within that time span, everything was just kind of accelerating to a point to where we just had to start moving. And I had called 911 and they sent me to fire dispatch. And when I talked to him, he had told people up creek who were concerned as well, and they told them to stay in their homes. And I had said, well, looking at it now, I don't think this house particularly is going to hold, or at least be safe to be in. And he was kind of talking me through it, and I understand, how dispatch works about being calm and figuring out the best solution. But just by the rate it was going, I kind of got frustrated. And in the moment, I said, well, send help or not, I got to get to work. And then that's whenever I kind of took the water on, and then one by one, they kind of started coming out, and they were a little panicked. I don't blame them. At this point, where we were in the front yard, the water was about thigh to waist deep, and everyone couldn't really get their footing. Um, and we'd gotten them onto a chain link fence, and I was taking one kid at a time, putting them in the back of a truck. And in between that, this is when I thought the worst had happened. Is I saw two of the boys. I saw one kind of get swept under, and then he had landed up against a car, and one of the other boys had turned around to help him. And I saw both of them get their footing back, and then I helped get the other child into the truck. And then Chrissy, I believe she's the homeowner and the mother. The fence fell down with her kind of leaning on it, and that's when I realized that this is seriously a dangerous situation. And at that moment, I was kind of scouting to see where I could go to figure out the best route because they were at least safe, in the truck by something sturdy. The kids were at the truck. I believe either Grandpa or Chrissy got them there, and I kind of figured out a good place to go. And I was shuttling kids one at a time over there. And at one point, it got kind of sketchy. So I grabbed the oldest kid, put him first, said, "Hey, I'm going to grab two more, and then you're going to take them up the road." And in between that whole transition, I had one, and then the power completely shut off. That's when we lost the power, and it was just complete darkness. And then with that happening, there was more panic. Um, Everyone kind of lost, whatever composure we had going. And then I kind of, didn't know where I was going. I lost the way I had found, and I kind of walked into their, I guess, drainage ditch, and I lost my footing. And I had actually gotten pushed down about 20, 30 feet down the road. And when I had got my footing, I kind of come back, rush back over, and we're finishing that transition. And we had gotten everyone up the road to safety, and that's when the police were able to arrive. And then we had worked together to get the grandfather out of the water. And at that time, we kind of just went, made sure everyone was awake, and was ready to move if they had to. But at that time, the water kind of reached as far as it was going to go up. Um, but the main part was just making sure we had accountability for everybody, and then we got all the dogs. That was very important to them. They were talking a lot about the dogs. But yeah, once everyone was safe, everyone kind of calmed down, and then the neighbors were very helpful finding them a place to go and to kind of recoup and gather themselves.
The mom who reached out to us credits you with saving her son's life. How does that feel today?
It was funny right before I'd actually you guys had called me. Me and my mom were talking about it. How I just kind of feel like it's a cool thing to be told of you saved my life and stuff, but it's just something that until you hear it, you don't really understand that. And so I'm kind of just like trying to figure out how to carry that weight and like just think about it. And I mean, in the moment, I just kind of said, I did my best, and I believe I was there for a reason. There was no reason for me to be up at 3 a.m. There was no reason for me to turn around and stay there. So it's just kind of that intervention that kept me there for a reason. So I give it a lot of credit to that too.
Kind of walk me through, like, most people have not seen floodwaters like this. Walk me through, like, how strong they are and, like, what's going on around you. Kind of talk about what that's like.
Yeah, so this was my first time ever dealing with a flood directly. Back in 2019, our creek had flooded, but not as bad as this. It was obviously safe enough for us to walk up to it and kind of like enjoy it and be like, oh, this sucks. But for actually to be in it and watching things collapse around you, surprisingly, I was mellow about it. I kind of understood, just I think it's because of how much they were panicking and seeing that, and if I woke up at 4 in the morning to my house flooded, I would, probably not be in the right mindset either. So seeing that, I kind of just decided to, no matter how scared and how confused I am about how to handle things, I just have to start making a plan of action. But definitely, with how loud the water was moving, the roaring of the creek, trees were coming down. I believe somebody on another news network was explaining one of the oak trees that was up pretty far up off the creek, well over maybe 80 yards from where the creek was supposed to be. And the water was so strong there that it took a completely healthy oak tree off its roots. And that's exactly where we were transporting them. And so to be in that water and listening to the thunder, the loud, water, the trees, hearing the roots come up off the trees and buildings crashing and things flying down the creek and everyone kind of yelling and screaming, trying to find who's where and stuff. It was definitely like surreal. It was kind of like the worst nightmare you've ever had, and just kind of realizing that in the moment is something that if you haven't gone through it, it's really kind of hard to comprehend.
How many kids were there? You were talking about passing kids along. Was this like a house full of kids or what was going on?
So I had assumed that it was the case, but I guess they were having a sleepover. So there was four kids total, and if I remember correctly, it's 12, 10, 7, maybe another 10-year-old. So they're all very young. But from what I believe and what I think I've gathered is that it was three kids of one family and one was there for a sleepover, I believe. Um, but to give the boys credit, I don't know which ones were which, but when watching them at that car work together and like fight together, like the composure they had, I was very impressed. The kids did very, very well for being kids with how much they handled that situation. As kids would, I was very, very impressed.
Well, is there anything else that you want to make sure people know or wanted to say?
I think definitely take flood warning serious. Those are one of those things you see pop up on your phone and you just hit the mute button. You know, if it might not directly affect where you are now, but if you know anybody or just know of a space in particular that will be affected by that or could be, definitely reach out and let them know. Because I was, like I said, one of those people that just see it and ignore it, even though I cross the low water crossing every day to get to work. You know, you just never think, oh, that could be us, or that could be these people here. Um, and yeah, no, definitely take these floods very serious.
Well, thank you again for doing this. I'm glad that you're safe. And
Yeah,
thanks for talking with us. I really appreciate it.
absolutely.
This will air tonight on KXAN News at 6. It'll also be online. I'll send you guys a link so that you can see it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Mhm.
Bye.
Absolutely, you too.